this video, we're going to start talking about sociocultural learning theory and how that applies to design. So the goal is to have this cognitive shift, just to start a cognitive shift. That means we want to start thinking about something in a way different from how we usually do. And there's two cognitive shifts. The first is we're going from learning as acquisition of information. That's thinking of learning as gaining information that someone's giving to you, to learning as participating in a social cultural context. That's learning as becoming a part of a community. And then the other cognitive shift is from education as given. That means our education system, which is usually our schools, assuming that it is just what it is and it has to be, to realizing that education is designed. Sometimes we call that artificial. It's something we made up. And by shifting the way you look at it, it opens spaces to maybe make things up a little bit differently to try to better support learning. Okay, so we're going to do two parts, the learning, participation, becoming, a little bridge of theory that's going to lead into understanding that education's artificial, which I will be doing in a second video. All right, learning, participating, becoming, this cognitive shift. So first of all, I'm going to talk about, this is from, her name's Anna Svard. She talks about two ways of thinking about learning. She calls them metaphors for learning. And of course, there's more than this. This is just simplifying it. One is acquisition, or we get something. So we can acquire, gain, and take in information. We can acquire new knowledge and skills. The teacher delivers or gives us knowledge, okay? And this is how in the United States, most people think about what learning is. It's acquiring stuff like this. But there is a different way to think about it. That's when you think about learning as doing or participating or as a process. And that can include discovering knowledge, finding stuff out, a process that results in some change in a person. A teacher becomes a facilitator, they become a guide, they become inspiring, but they're not giving all the information. This is from Anna Svard, what this leaves out a little bit is that learning can go beyond just discovering knowledge and such to actually becoming a part of a community. And this is a way to think about learning in different ways. So learning is part of a community. When you learn, you come to belong to a community. It's an identity. Learning is becoming. It's experience and meaning, and it's doing in practice. This is from Wenger, who will be talking about his community of practice theory later in the term. So this is Anna Svard's article on two metaphors for learning, and she kind of said it's dangerous to choose just one of them. Okay, so typically we have this acquiring information model. Sometimes in critical pedagogy, which is another thing we're not going to get into yet, but it looks at learning as it's called the banking model, where someone's just putting information into your head and you're just accepting everything they say, and puts that against like a problem solving. And I'm kind of conflating that right now with sociocultural view of learning. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's an interesting contrast where we're learning through problem solving and participating with a community. Okay, so I like to have pictures of my cat and things, so I just thought I'd put a picture of cat here. How does my cat learn to be a cat? Now, this is oversimplified, and this is probably not even that true, but I like think about it. This is my cat right here, Amira, and this is my parents' cat, Chloe. She's passed away now, but Amira used to really try to hang out with Chloe a lot, and Chloe didn't always like that. But it was almost like she was coming to belong as a cat. She's going to act like a cat. She's going to experience the world like a cat. Okay? So the things she did, she came to do them to become cat-like and belong as a cat. And just as a side note, she actually really liked dogs, probably more than cats at that time in her life. But that's her friend dog, Ruxpin. So another way to think of this is these are 7 principles of learning, and I'm just throwing out all these ideas to help you think differently about this. This is from the Institute for Research and Learning, and it was actually part of Hewlett Packard's early work. John Seeley Brown was part of it. But here's 7 principles they came up with. First is that learning is fundamentally social. It's not really an individual activity, it's a social activity. Knowledge is integrated in the life of communities. Any community you're in, you're going to see that there's knowledge, people know things throughout that community. Learning is participating in a community, and it depends on engagement in practice. Knowing means you're able to do something and participate. Engagement is inseparable from empowerment. Failure to learn is a result of exclusion from participation. So it's saying when someone isn't learning something, it's because they're being excluded from participating in a community. And then the last one is we are all lifelong learners. Sometimes we say, oh, we want our students to be lifelong learners. Well, they're going to be lifelong learners. That's what humans are. They learn. However, what they learn is going to vary depending on their context in their community. Okay? So just start letting this kind of seep into your brain and think about learning in these ways. Now, we're going to go to something a little bit heavier. This is kind of a bridge. It's how I'm connecting this learning idea to design that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Vygotsky and the zone of proximal development. And this is the foundation of all sociocultural learning theories. Okay? So first of all, just what is a theory? It's an idea, model, or set of principles that explains observations. It can't be proven false. I have that backwards. I need to fix that. It can be proven false. I wrote it. It can be proven false, but never fully proven true. Okay, you can't fully prove that it's right, but you can say, oh, this doesn't line up with what usually happens. And it's usually a lens that guides how we see something. And what that does is it gives us ways to change it. Because we see it in a certain way, we have new ideas of how we could make it be different. Okay? All right, so here's the main idea. This is the big quote. I'm going to read it. Every function in the child's cultural development, so let's just take that part. That's basically thinking of child development, the function in their development. It appears twice. When they're learning something or they're developing, it happens twice. First, on the social level, that's with others, and later on the individual level. So first between people, which is interpsychological, and then inside the child, which is intrapsychological. And Vygotsky is talking about children, but many have taken his work and said, look, this applies to all types of learning. First, we learn on a social level, interpsychological. That's we learn to do something with other people, with other tools, with different types of support. And then we learn to do it individually, or it becomes a part of us. So everything we learn starts in the social and then moves internal. That's Vygotsky's theory. Probably the most famous part of this is the zone of proximal development, ZPD, okay? And that's the idea of you think of what you can do, what you can't do, and there's an overlap here. These are things I can't yet do myself, but I can do it with help. I can do it with others. And when students work on things in their zone of proximal development right here, it begins moving from being in the zone of proximal development to something they can do themselves. Moves from the social sphere over to the individual, interpsychological to intrapsychological. So the zone of proximal development, is where instruction generally should be based to help them grow. Now it says what I can do with help, the help of others. This help from others can include teachers, it can be peers, it can be different types of tools. So it can be technological tools, language supports, templates, resources like the internet. Those are things external to the person that supports them in completing a task they can't yet do on their own, but hopefully after they get some practice with the supports, they'll be able to do it on their own. Another word we use for this a lot is scaffolding. Okay, so on a building, they put up scaffolding for the people to help build the building before the building can be firm on its own, on itself. Okay, so scaffolding is the things that we put in place to support learning before someone can do it all on their own. But hopefully, eventually, they'll be able to do it without the scaffolding. So a really good example of this, where the help, the others, includes a technological tool, is the program Duolingo. Okay, I don't know if you've ever used Duolingo. I'm using it to learn Spanish right now. And so I'm going to just kind of show you some screenshots from my phone when I was working on Duolingo that I noticed. So if you take something like this, they want me to translate this sentence. That's kind of difficult. And it's actually sometimes it's in what I can't do yet. The very beginning of my learning, I probably can't do that yet. Okay? But what they do is they break it down and they give scaffolds or supports. So for example, here they give me most of the sentence and all I have to do is find the verb. And the picture also helps me know what the verb's supposed to do. So this moves it into the zone of proximal development. Oh, I don't like that. Let's just go with a pen. That moves it into the zone of proximal development, something I can do with the support of the choices in the picture. Okay? Then maybe this one, when you click the button, it actually says it out loud. So now it says the words and all I have to do is listen and type in what the last word is. Again, so this is a scaffolding or support that lets me do this with help. So this, again, is within my zone of proximal development. Maybe when I get a little better at that, it gets to where that type of thing, just listening and typing, becomes something I can do. But then this is a little bit harder, okay? And these are different sentences, but you'll see in the program, they actually do all these ways with the same sentence. This time, they have the Spanish, and I have to put the English, but I have choices for the words. The choices form a scaffold. So maybe I couldn't quite do this over here without the words, but when they put the words to help me, that makes it easier for me to do. And then now instead of giving the English, now they're going to give the English and I have to put the Spanish. But I'm given choices, okay? So that helps me, that's scaffolding to help me in this zone. And finally, now that I can do that and I can do this really well, I get to where this straight translation, instead of it being something I can't do, it's something I can do with help because I can underline the clues. If I hover over on my phone, I can get those words if I'm stuck. Or if I don't need to do that, I can just type it and show that I can do it without the extra supports. So that's how zone of proximal development works. And the main idea behind Vygotsky, remember, is that I'm going to do something socially in a social cultural context first, and then I'll be able to do it individually. So learning is a social activity. All right? Okay, in part 2, we're going to talk about how to take this theory and these ideas and put it into place to help support learning.